I drew this full manga with the intense time crunch of 24 hours and no prior experience of making manga. Little did I know this would be the most intense creative challenge of my life. The thing I had to do is some research on how to actually make manga. So apparently there's levels to this stuff. This is actually a really in-depth process, so I'll try detailing the process. First we have to get the idea of the manga, which includes the story, plot, and characters. Here we come up with the core concept and hook for the story in our story arc. Then we have the storyboard, where we have to draw out loosely the full and pace of the manga, where we draw a more detailed rough sketch over the storyboard. Now since I'll be working digitally, it will be easier for me to do the inking, but some mangakas still actually do inking on paper like I don't know how to say it. Then we can do shading and screen tones to create some depth. And lastly, lettering and final touches. And then you're done. Now I should note that not all mangakas are gonna follow this format the same way. Now did I follow that? No, but I still managed to get out a good manga. It was really hard to come up with the idea for the manga. I would spend like 2 to 3 hours just thinking about different ideas, but eventually I would come to my senses with the perfect idea. At first I had the idea of just making a regular, boring, stale, plain, dry shonen action, but then I thought of some recent anime and I thought, free run. So I decided to do that and make it a slice of life fantasy. And instead of it being free run Fern and Stark with a mage and a warrior, I decided to do a mage and an orc. There are actually 5 different types of manga. Shonen, which targets young boys. Shoujo, which targets young girls. Seinen for adult men. Josei for adult women. Kodomomuke. I don't know how to say it. Created for children. Now I decided to do a mix of shonen and shoujo by having a female protagonist, but by having it be a fantasy, so it can also appeal to a more shonen audience. I basically just searched up cool fantasy names online and picked the first option. I made the setting and the actual backstory, but it was kinda useless since I didn't actually use it in the actual manga, but it's still good for setting the mood. You can read it here if you want. Also drew out the characters, but I had to move on since I spent 4 hours on this thing. Yeah, I had to hurry up. But now with the hard part out of the way, it's time to start actually developing the storyboard. Making the storyboard was actually the hardest part. Trying to creatively portray the message of a story and using paneling to create a flow, it was definitely hard. It just puts into perspective how much work is actually put into pacing and composition in manga, and puts into perspective the work and dedication of mangakas. I would decide to make the manga a 16-page one-shot. A one-shot manga called Yoki Kiri is a manga that tells the entire story in 15 to 60 pages. It's usually written in contests and sometimes later developed into a fully length manga series. The program I'm using is Krita, but most mangakas don't actually use Krita. They use Clip Studio Paint, which has the paper size for manga and like what most professional mangakas use. The size that most mangas use is B4, which is pretty big, but I decided to use A4 because it was gonna make my computer lag less and it was easier. Mangakas, if you don't know, are very dedicated. Many work over 10 hours a day just to meet deadlines. Take, for example, Arichiro Oda, who only sleeps for 3 hours a day, which is crazy since he'd sustained that since 1997. Fortunately, I didn't have to do that and only worked for only 6 to 8 hours a day on it, but the amount of dedication, again, here I was struggling a lot with paneling because I feel like paneling is one of the bases for good manga. Like if you don't have good paneling, then it's gonna be hard to make the manga flow right. One tip that I learned for paneling is making the characters face the same way that the manga is going. Since manga is read right to left, a lot of characters should mostly face left to make it easier to read and so that the manga just flows well. There are a lot of general struggles just trying to make a cohesive story. Since I low-key didn't flesh that out for these 16 pages, I just fleshed out the backstory, so it took a bit long. Yeah, no, it took 8 hours, but hey, at least I made a good storyboard that flows alright. The next phase was sketching it out. This phase was pretty easy, although sometimes I would have to look at references, which is totally fine. Most mangakas do it. While I was developing the manga, I kind of made it a comedy without even realizing. I was kind of having fun, just making small gags here and there, you know. I guess you guys will see it in the full version. The thing about sketching this as well, I don't really draw no manga style often, so it's kind of hard to get it to look good, but I figured it out eventually. Also, I was having problems recording because it was a bit laggy and I was listening to music while I was drawing, so I'd kind of just have to sit in silence while I was recording. Also go listen to Lucy Bedrock. This part took me 4 hours, so I would have 6 hours to do the line art and the text. Now would I do screen tones? No. Why? Well, I was tired. I would be crunched for time, so I had to do this bit quickly. Another problem I had was just I couldn't get the right font. Since Krita only allowed system fonts, I would have to use Comic Sans, which did not look that great. But it will do, I guess. Line art takes a while for me because I usually don't do line art and just polish up the sketch. Most mangakas have an easier time than this, probably doing line art, but I'm not them. Now what I forgot to do was pick the title and make a cover. Now to my defense, I forgot. Now if I were to make the title, I would call it Uchi Mahashukai. Why? Well, I don't know. It's Japanese for poop mage. I thought it was funny. I would actually have 1 hour and 30 minutes left with me being done the line art. Now what I did for those 1 hour 30 minutes, I got distracted and made an IG account. But I was able to finish my manga, and this is the final result. Days. If you want to read it, I'll have it posted on my Twitter. If you like this video, you may like this video of me rating art tips.